Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank all of you, President Tom and Doug and the Lancaster Rotary for having me here. Like he said, it's a heavy topic, sex trafficking, especially when we talk about it happening in Lancaster County. I'm the Executive Director of North Star Initiative. How many of you have actually heard of North Star Initiative? Oh, great, awesome. So just to give you a little history, the organization was started in 2009, became a 501c3 in 2010, and we've spent the last years basically being advocates and educating our community on basically domestic sex trafficking 101 and the fact that it is here in Lancaster County. We've created great alliances throughout the county with social service providers, the law enforcement, legislators, and educators. There is an estimated, and I'll preface this by saying some of what I'm going to speak about is a little heavy, and I apologize for that, but it's reality. Heavy with statistics. Some you'll just shake your head because you just won't believe it. But there's an estimated 20 to 30 million victims being trafficked globally, according to ILO. And out of that, over 5 million of them is specific to sex trafficking. I will say, you may have heard of labor trafficking, and it all comes under the guise of human trafficking, but specifically what North Star does is to address sex trafficking. Another statistic is that 98% of all the victims in sex trafficking and exploitation are women and girls. 80% of those trafficked in the United States are US citizens. These are not girls and women that they're bringing across the borders. I get asked that question quite often. They are the local women in your community. Sex trafficking used to be rated number 3 as far as organized crime in the US. It is now number 2 and trailing fast on becoming number 1 to drug trafficking. Typically what you're gonna find where drug trafficking, and now that we've heard in the news over and over with the opioid crisis that we're all facing, sex trafficking is right behind. Okay, and like I said, oh, there we go. Technology eludes me. So what is domestic sex trafficking? You saw the piece that Doug put together. Why is it thriving? And basically, what have we done at North Star to combat this? The thing you need to know most about sex trafficking, let's start with the definition. It is the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, or obtaining of a person for the purpose of a sexual enslavement or a commercial sex act, that it is used by force, fraud, or coercion. Those are the 3. So the other big question that we constantly are asked is, well, isn't this prostitution? What's the difference? Why don't they leave? It's their choice. These are all the conversation. So you have to remember those 3 words, force, fraud, coercion, They can't leave. Some of them are drugged. Some of them are beaten. Most of them are beaten. All of them have fear of the recourse to themselves or to their family if they try to step out of this lifestyle. When you look at this map, this shows all of the trafficking that's occurred in the United States. All 50 states have been touched by this. And 85% of these cases has been sex trafficking. I want to emphasize that this is a $99 billion, with a B, dollar industry a year. That means on a daily average, $272 million are made in trafficking our women and our girls in this country. The FBI estimates that there is actually over 22,000 trafficked victims, and that's an increase from last year of 17,500. So you can see how quickly and enormously it's rising. Oh, hit the button. Okay, this thing is kind of going on its own, sorry. Yeah, right there would be great, thank you. So notice in the red, that's highly populated areas for trafficking. It also reports that there's 2.8 million children run away each year. And the statistics tell us that within 48 hours, if they are not rescued or located, that over half of them will be subject to some sort of trafficking in the United States. So why? Why is this happening in Pennsylvania? And more specifically, why is it happening in Lancaster County? The big thing is that Pennsylvania is what we consider a pass-through state. And if you referred back to that map, you'll see that we are located between Washington, D.C., New York City, Philadelphia, Baltimore. We have all the big hubs. And the proximity to where specifically Lancaster County is located, we're located near huge highway corridors, 95, 81, 283, 30, all of those linking us to those major highways. So it makes it very easy for Pennsylvania to be a pass-through state. Pennsylvania is now what the traffickers consider a destination for sex trafficking and are luring the victims and their Johns in that regard. The other reason is that our state legislature, we are ranked a C on a report card as of 2016 with the legislature that has gone through to protect the victims of sex trafficking. And I cannot stress enough that it has to start there with our laws that will actually protect these women and girls. And again, it's a big business. So just to give you an idea, if a trafficker had 4 women working 7 days a week, and by the way, their average is about 8 to 9 women that they have working for them, and they meet a quota of $500 a night, which is about the average, they would make $632,000 in 1 year. So understand that as a drug trafficker, you sell your drug, you're out of your supply. You need to go find it again so that you can keep selling. With sex trafficking, your supply is limitless until she eventually dies or can escape from it. It's big business. So this doesn't look like a place that trafficking can take place, right? This is our beautiful Lancaster County. But the unfortunate truth is that with all the tourist activity, and this, I'm sure most of you recognize this picture, is that it sets it up for the perfect storm for trafficking. It is people coming to our area to visit. It is people leaving unnoticed. It is traffickers bringing the women into hotels that aren't regulated or don't care, quite frankly, who they're renting a room to by the hour. It is low-budget hotel rooms, and it's close proximity to major highways. Easy in, easy out. And it's a high tourist area. So we're often questioned on what is occurring in the county. And is this really a problem in Lancaster County? We hear that question often. So I'm just going to tell you a few things that we as the staff at North Star have come across just in this year, just in a few short months. We've had an Ephrata-based church that called us that 2 women ran from a truck stop right off of 322, that they escaped trafficking and walked in the doors of the church begging somebody to help them. East Lampeter Police, who are a wonderful alliance with North Star, say that they get calls weekly on that Route 30 corridor, at the truck stops, at the Walmarts that exist on the 30 corridor. I had a Mannheim Central mom, after seeing her daughter on social media she was being bloodied, beaten, tied, and claiming to be trafficked, called us for assistance to please help and find her, to try to get her back. Cochranville man actually posted an ad in Lancaster County for jobs, asking women, need a job, come to a seminar, rented a room at a local hotel, had them come, think that they were being courted for a new position. We had 2 single moms that went, sent them to Florida for training, both of which were then drugged, beaten, and put into trafficking. We've only been able to locate one, the other is gone, and has been for months. Our latest 2 were one from Pequay Valley. She graduated last year. The same trafficking ring was taking these Lancaster County high school grads, and they're taking them to South Jersey, is the location, trafficking them and keeping them locked in hotel rooms there. 2 months ago, we got a call from another girl, just turned 19 in July. She's a CV grad. Her parents are plugged into the church. Her mom is an educator in one of the school districts. Father's a successful business person. And she ended up at the ER at Lancaster General having an overdose on K2 from her trafficker. LGH thought it was an overdose until they finally started speaking to this girl and realized she was being trafficked and had been dumped off at the corner by her trafficker, thinking she was just going to die anyway. So here's some facts. Now that you know that there are women here involved, it's good to know what the day in the life of one of these women is like. The first number is 12 to 14. I don't know if you can see that. And that's the average age that the child will actually start being exploited and can enter into trafficking. They are picking up these girls in social media settings, sometimes broken homes. Clearly that's an issue, but sometimes not. One of the girls that has transitioned now to a female adult age, which is the population we serve, said that it was her church pastor that got these girls involved. And what they thought was a healthy organization turned into just be a vehicle for trafficking. Studies have shown that 75 to 95% of sexually exploited persons were sexually abused as children, and that's what we see with the clients that we work with at North Star. The NYPD has actually created an entire task force that does nothing but stay at Madison Square Garden in the train station there, because they recognize that if a female shows up off that train and is looking like she clearly doesn't know where she's going, or that maybe she's run away, or just having a moment, that if they don't have a touch with her and get her planted somewhere, that within 48 hours she is gone and most likely being trafficked. They actually now station in there to try to rescue these girls. 98% of them are physically abused. So when you ask the question, well, can't they just leave? Well, why don't they just run? They could find somebody. Understand that if you've been beaten and drugged and threatened, it's hard to just walk out that door for fear that they may take your life, and in some cases, they've threatened to take your family's life. 71%, 71% have shared that they are suicidal. The death rate of a sex trafficked victim is 200 times higher than normal, and they will usually die from a homicide, suicide, drug overdose, or from contracting a sexually transmitted disease that goes untreated, like HIV. And this is the one, they're all horrific and startling, but this is the one I think settles with me most, is that it's 7 years. 7 years is the time that when a woman enters into sex trafficking, if you don't rescue her and get her out and offer her some kind of restoration rehabilitative services, she will die. So when I tell you the age is 12 to 14 that they're moving in, you can do the math. We're talking what my children's age. You know, I have 2 in college, they're 19, 18. But at this point, the likelihood that she'll even survive is slim. Some of them don't leave because they actually suffer what's called the Stockholm Syndrome, which I'm sure there's some of us in the room that remember that. It was Patty Hearst, who actually didn't leave her captors because she started to identify with them, and that does happen. So, to put it in perspective, the drugs, the rape, the unending abuse, feeling trapped, no way out, the trauma that they sustain is horrific. And according to a report that was shared by Shared Hope International, the conservative, and I stress that, conservative estimates of rapes of sex trafficked victims experiences 5 rapes at 5 days a week for 1 year, which means that that lady has been raped 1,300 times in 1 year. And this can combine with the beatings, the fear, and the drug use is why the damage and the trauma is just so overwhelming. So coming from situations of trafficking and exploitation, women experience a complex range of trauma symptoms, which are often displayed for months and even years afterwards. And to just kind of bring this point home, I just want to share another quick story about one of the women that we work with. And for the point of the story, I'm going to call her Sherry. Sherry is actually in her 40s. She started being trafficked when she was 3 by her mother. And the grooming process, and there's tons of grooming processes, was that her mom would get her ready by doing her hair and making her pretty for her dates. and then was trafficking her to a various number of men. Sherry's been out of the lifestyle for a few years, and she's been working with our non-residential program and trying to work through the therapy. But two things that Sherry still can't do to this day, and one is her hair. So and I'll speak to the women, not that the men don't care about their hair, but we go to the hairdresser. That's kind of like our time, at least it is for me, that no kids, no dog, no phone, to just relax. She can't do that, has never had her hair done, can barely let anybody touch it. The other was the dentist. She needed some dental care, hadn't had it for years. We took her to a local dentist that was trauma-informed and knew the situation coming in, and she basically went into a catatonic dissociative state, completely destroyed his office, and probably sent him and his entire staff into trauma by the simple act of touching her mouth, sent her back there. So a lack of specialized resources. So it's a problem that our Congress and our senators are now addressing the issue. Our president has had a roundtable discussion we've seen on domestic sex trafficking, but it still remains that there are only 529 beds specifically designated to victims of sex trafficking for restoration in the entire United States. 529. That's less than 1% of what we actually need to offer a restoration for these women. I had mentioned earlier that we work with East Lampeter Township. Detective Chris Jones, who's hands and feet on the ground there, gave us a quote that says, "As we continue to deal with prostitution-related crimes in East Lampeter Township, I believe the harbor, as presented, will have the potential to impact the recidivism rate of these offender victims and provide a service outside the criminal justice system." They have come to us. We work closely with the Pennsylvania State Police. They also have an undercover task force saying, open the harbor. We have been tracking these women. We're trying to follow them. We're trying to keep our eyes on them. But the bottom line is we have nowhere to take them unless you're open. That was always the vision of North Star, was to open the first restoration home in Lancaster County and, quite frankly, in central Pennsylvania. The closest that offers is there is a smaller home in Philadelphia. There's also one in Baltimore, and I believe there's one that does sort of the same thing in Bucks County. But as far as Susquehanna Valley, central PA, we're it. So our goal has always been to open this home, which we call the harbor, and it's to restore these women's lives for freedom, for life, and forever. So how do we do this? We have a three-pillar approach to our mission. The first is that we mobilized. We've been doing this for years. We've been awakening and educating the community to address that there actually is even an issue of sex trafficking in this area. We do speaking engagements that you've so graciously asked me to come here. We do school prevention programs. We've identified actually that the school district of Lancaster and that Milton Hershey have a high incident of girls that will most likely go into be caught into sex trafficking. We're speaking at Hershey, creating a program there next month to speak to these girls so that when they leave that school district and they go home for a break, what does it look like? What do they need to be on the lookout? What do they need to safeguard themselves so they don't get caught up in this? Alliance building. Thanks. You're doing that for me, I think. I don't even know if I'm doing that. We've just created alliances with law enforcement, with social service agencies, and with elected officials, because like I said, it needs to start there. The laws need to change. And we've created the harbor. The harbor, just by definition alone, is a haven where ships, boats, and barges can seek shelter from a stormy weather, a place of security, a comfort, a refuge. So at North Star, we believe that's it. So what does our program look like? Our program is a residential 6-month to 24-month program where the women will come to us and live, and we will deal with a holistic, individual, Christ-centered care for these women. So we're asked, you're a Christian organization, does that mean that they have to be Christian when they walk in the door? No. Does that mean they have to be Christian when they leave the door? We hope they will, but no. What that means is that we understand that the restoration that's going to come to these women, although we can hit the educational and the emotional, and their medical needs and their legal needs. But we also understand that at the deep root of that has to be Christ-centered to restore their lives to whole. So the harbor will be a 24-hour, 7-day a week. We will offer individual and group therapy there. They will learn their life skills, job prep, resume building, interview skills. You have to understand that most of these women won't even have an ID card when they show up at our door. Their names have been changed, and that'll be a whole process of going through to actually restore their identity in the most basic way, and then to offer the services they need. We're partnering with Water Street to offer their medical and dental because they are very trauma-informed. They understand the horrificness that these women are coming out of. And they'll also have the opportunity to get their GED. Most of these women won't have it, some will. But past that, we understand that to launch them into the independent, healthy living, that they need to truly have a skill set other than just your GED to go earn minimum wage somewhere, because all that's going to do is propel them back into this lifestyle. So we're hoping to offer them college courses, perhaps maybe some STEM curriculum, because we understand that that's also a great way to go with these women. And that takes mentors, and it takes community to come around. I wanted to say that, and I should mention at the beginning, the number 30. Significant. Why is that? So in the time that I've been talking, which roughly by the time I'm finished will be 30 minutes, that every 30 seconds a woman is being trafficked in the state of Pennsylvania, which means that 60 children and women have just been trafficked since the time that I've stood up here to speak to you today. So what can you do? How can you be a part of our mission and what we're doing? Advocates. Reach out to your local law enforcement. Reach out to your elected officials. Have the conversations with them that what are they doing? What are they doing in our county? What are they doing in our townships to prevent and to just be aware so that constantly what we're not hearing is this can't possibly be happening in Lancaster County. Educate your children and your administrators and your staff at your local school districts. I cannot speak enough to that. Having teenage children and still one that's in the public school system, social media, we must educate our youth what that looks like and the predators that are good. They troll that. Volunteer your time. We would love to have mentors for these women. They are going to need strong business people to step in beside them to show them what it's like to have healthy relationships with men, healthy relationships in the workplace, what a workplace dynamic even looks like for them. Consider offering an internship or a career for them. We would love to have that conversation with you if that's something you could do, just to partner them along. Understand that most of them have never held a full-time job of any sort. And engage your local churches to meet with us, to partner with us. The other way, as of all nonprofits will stand up here and ask you, I'm sure over and over again, is give. So everything that we do is donation-based. We are not publicly government-funded, but simple individual giving. So maybe it's a gift, like the Extraordinary Give was mentioned, or come see the harbor, come meet the staff, come talk to us on how you could actually partner with our organization. I'm just going to finish up by saying that the topic is hard and the topic is heavy, but there is hope. And if we can get these women the restoration and the rehabilitation that they probably have lacked since they were just toddlers, it's our desire and hope that we know that they can be completely restored and that this can just be a part of their testimony in life. So I want to end with just a quick scripture, but I think it's timeless, and that Proverbs 31:8-9 says, "We speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, and we speak up and we defend the rights of the poor and the needy." And that's our jobs. That's our jobs, to give a voice to these women who clearly have not had one. So I have a video. I think are we okay with time? It's just a real quick. But this will just kind of give you an idea. I think it was the next, sorry. Slide here. Is there no voice? Oh, that's okay. Then you're probably not gonna. That's okay if you can't do that.
There was no such thing as comfort in my life. I was objectified, sold into a world where my humanity was stripped away. My past taught me this was how the world was. And I had to open the door so that truth could come in. Restoration wasn't easy. I'm not sure it ever is, though. Sent to jail, sent to rehab, sentenced to a life of change, if I wanted it. The thing that I was scared of most, relationships, trusting people, it was the very thing that ended up saving my life. There are so many people in this world manipulating others using fear and dependency. There are also people who listen and who encourage hope. Those are the people who gave me a place where I learned I could share my story and still be loved. They taught me that I was created to be cherished. I was created to be free. And I believe that.
So thank you for having me, and of course, if there's any questions, this is